Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Intrato Way. Today, we're joined by Terry Miles, who is the Director of Portfolio Delivery, and Matt Jensen, who is the VP of Reliability Engineering. Matt, right away, I noticed about your title, you've dropped site reliability. You just say reliability engineering. I think that's the right model. How did you come to just saying reliability engineering?
There's a heck of a lot more to delivery of services than just the site itself, right? So if we wanted to make certain that the folks within Intrato, customers, et cetera, understood the scope of the team, we dropped site.
Nice. Yeah, it just makes sense. I think the technical industry is joining all the medical industry and the transportation industry in recognizing reliability as a base requirement. Like it's not a nice to have, it's not a bolt on afterwards. It's the bottom line. So great to see you guys do this. So, and thank you for joining us today. Matt, you and I have talked before in the SRE realm. And when I talked to you, I think it was earlier this year, and you had so many initiatives going that you couldn't start another one. How are things going today?
It's a little bit more calm. Feel like we've got our feet under us, got a good head of steam. The foundations that we're building are going well. The ones that are built are operating well. And we're kind of turning our heads towards not just the pivotal pieces, but especially today, those pieces that front end and surround the rest of the foundation. That's the area where I'm spending the vast majority of my brain power.
Awesome. Well, can we get a timeline from you? When did you take over this team? What did you bring along with you? And how long do you expect this whole journey to take?
I took over what, Terry? You'll have to help me be my memory. It was January-ish, February-ish.
Late January.
January. I brought with me a trusted cohort that I'd worked with for many years in the past to kind of form the head of our SRE practice, Jeff Friesen. I think, Terry, you know him well. Jeff is working on still spinning up all of the reliability engineers that will work for him. But since then, we've also realized that Intrato, we changed our name recently, had a gap in that we had a pivotal team that was doing a great job building out on-prem and public cloud foundations, but we didn't have a dedicated public cloud team, right? So as we've talked to a whole lot of the other folks that are playing in this space, they generally had a pivotal team that kind of grew out of the public cloud team. Well, we've done it in reverse. We've gone back in and kind of backfilled a public cloud team simply because we saw all of the gaps that were being illuminated by the fact that we had lots of foundations going up and we had lots of apps going into those foundations, but not everything can live in the foundation. There's databases, there's other things that need to live next to those foundations. And we didn't have enough people skilled to be able to help our developers know how to put those things next to the foundations in order to be successful with their transformations.
Yeah. I still think of PCF as a kind of meta OS that you put in, and you're still going to have to supply a lot of things around the edges.
Yep.
So one of the interesting things, when we talked to Thomas, he talked about Adrian Cocroft saying, we hired these people from you and let them work. And so the cohort that you brought with you, were there Intrato staff? Were they new staff you'd worked with before?
The gentleman that I primarily pulled along had been a part of my previous organization where I ran most of our production applications before they were transformed. So a whole lot of what's being moved into the foundations today are applications that I used to run in their old, hairy, painful iterations. Are fun legacy apps, right?
Okay.
So I brought along a guy that's always way smarter than me,
yep.
Who would generally tell me when I was going down a wrong path.
Wow.
So Jeff's good for that.
Yeah, one of the things that we hear over and over again is that cohort, and the slant of this series is, hey, we're an accidental software company in 2019. We're like looking in the mirror and like we're gonna have to do something, and so we're hoping to help these folks. One of the anti-patterns I see is that the organization doesn't dig in its own strength. It doesn't go find people who know exactly what this route would look like or could lead on this route. and pull them into it. They think I got to go hire someone who used to be from Amazon and blah blah blah. Let's talk about hiring just a little bit. How many outside people have you had to bring in?
We have brought in what I would call two heavy hitters, two people that work on our pivotal operations team that had extensive experience outside, and then we have another four that we grew internally. And if we'd have brought in all of them from the outside, we would have fallen on our face. If we tried to bring them all and grow them all internally, we would not be anywhere near as far along as we are today, right? Yeah. So it had to be a little bit of both in order for us to meet our timelines.
Yeah, that's an interesting ratio. So 2 heavy hitters, 4 people who know the organization. And would you say that's a kind of golden mix, or that's just this one worked out?
I wouldn't have wanted to go beyond half and half.
Great. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. From Thomas, we got at the executive level, bring in a third new people, keep a third people, bring your cohort as the other third. Yeah. I think that's a super important message for our customers, or for anyone who, it doesn't matter whether you're going to be a customer pivot or not. If you're considering business transformation, gosh, just don't go fire everyone. Like it's just the wrong model. The world knows what reliability engineering means now. It's not a secret term among people who, have pizzas slid under their doors, right? It's what the world is doing now. So, well, thank you for that insight. Along the other kinds of things that we like to ask on this series is, what kind of support do you get? Who's your executive and how do they help you?
Well, I report directly to Thomas Squeo, our CTO.
Yep.
And Thomas is kind of the guy behind all of this. None of our transformation would have happened without his. Nobody convinced Thomas that we needed to do this. Thomas knew we needed to do this and went about convincing everyone else, right? Okay. So I don't want to say that we're unique in that. I'm sure that happens elsewhere, but we did not have to try to get him to buy in. If anything, it's been Thomas who's been clanging heads together saying you need to get on board for a long time. Great.
Yeah. And as a message, Pivotal works with 150 companies doing this, and there's no case where there isn't someone who essentially bet their career on it. And so if you're
fair.
Yeah. And if you're in an organization where no one's willing to bet their career on a business transformation, you're extremely, well, I'll just ask you, if you just said it, if there was no one who would bet their career on it, it just really wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That right there is the prime message of this whole thing. Like you're going to have to commit. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for the fill in on those kind of details. I think those are, if you're watching, you want to build a staffing plan, you want to build a model, you're starting to see the pieces you're going to need. Some internal, some external, strong support. I always like taking it straight to the personal question. Like if you didn't have that strong support, what would your life be like now? What would the Intrato operational side look like without that?
Well, I would still be in my old role, right? If we didn't have that buy-in from the top, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to move over here. And if we didn't have the buy-in from the top and somebody said, "Hey, do you want to be that guy?" I'll tell you right now, I would not have been that guy.
Right.
The amount of pressure that Thomas had to go and apply to the right people at the right time through 2 regimes is a lot.
That's
right?
That's a Sisyphusian task.
Yes, I would have still been back in the role where I was constantly on incident bridges, constantly trying to drive incremental small improvement in uptime due to, no, you can't do that network change at this time. No, you can't take that window for that telecom change because we have this other change going on over here at the same time. And everybody would be directing their ire at the guy who says no constantly. Yeah. I can't tell you the last time I said no in this role. I've said a whole lot of hold on, let me check.
Yeah.
And then I get back to him with here's when, right?
Right.
I don't say no anymore. It's fantastic. It's totally changed my outlook on not just work, but my outlook with my family as well. I don't want to sound like I've drank the Kool-Aid on this stuff, but I'm going to be honest with you, it tastes pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, certainly at the very bottom of this is when I learned to work this way, I all of a sudden had new tools to work with my 7-year-old son and my wife and all that stuff. Like we come from a pairing model, not required, it's not required that you move to a pairing model. Did you move to a pairing model?
For anything new that we haven't done before, it's always pairing. And then as various people on the team have figured out that, hey, they're just better for it, they do it on their own. For things that are really rote and repeatable that we haven't yet automated, generally we'll have somebody go do that on their own while somebody else is trying to figure out how to automate it.
Yeah, and that makes
just
Yep. One of the things that Thomas said that I thought was great was he talked about new problems. So you just gave, in the old world, I was saying no, I was coordinating, I was taking the brunt of everyone's concern. Okay, it's great to hear that those kind of problems can go away. And we see this very consistently in customers. That whole category of problem goes away. What's the new problem? And is the new problem more interesting?
Example, Terry and I just this morning talking about how long are we going to keep an old build pack on the system, right? Are we going to do it for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or are we going to say there's only one at a time, right? That's a really nice conversation to have. How long can we leave something out there for developers to use so that they can still get their work done while still expecting them to update within a reasonable number of sprints?
Yeah.
What a nice conversation. And by the way, we did all of that via an instant message. We didn't have to have an argument about it. We didn't have to have a meeting about it. We didn't have to have 12 people on it. Just the two of us chatting.
Yeah. That is, we see that. We see that with the structure controlled all the way to the edges, you don't have the architectural tax meetings anymore. You don't have to have, and so a side note of that is that people tend to work more. That is, there's more productive hours in a week because you're not having architecture meetings to figure out what bit you're allowed to twiddle when. And so,
yeah, we find ourselves now spending time in stand-ups comparing meetings we have later in the day and saying, how can we make it so as few of us as possible need to be in that? And oftentimes the team's saying, hey, so-and-so's best at this one, go handle it and shoot us a note in real time in our chat room.
Yeah, okay. We see the same markers everywhere. Matt, are you a Silicon Valley guy? Did you come to West Intrado from Silicon Valley? Are you native to?
Man, I live in Omaha, Nebraska. I've lived in the Midwest my whole life.
Yeah.
Furthest away I've been to live is Texas.
Yeah. And did you ever work for a Silicon Valley company?
I worked for Nortel for 10 years. If you want to call a Canadian company a Silicon Valley company, I don't think you do.
I wouldn't. One of the things, SRE was invented at Google essentially, or it was at least popularized at Google. And again, back to, if you're in Omaha, right? Yep. You're in Omaha. If you're in Omaha and you're like, yeah, this is a bunch of Google gobbledygook SRE thing, and it won't work with my staff who's never seen the ocean on the West Coast, blah, blah, blah. What would you say to them?
I would say you need to read a little bit more and probably talk to Tony for a little bit.
Okay, great. I'm happy to do it. So, we see this model work we have the Silicon Valley state of mind. Excuse me. We have the Silicon Valley state of mind as one of our kind of taglines, but this is what it looks like to me. It's like, oh gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have short conversations about policy that we could just turn around and type in somewhere, and then that's the policy. And I think that's available, right? So
I'll insert something that brought me to you originally, Tony. And you and I actually did another podcast for Intrato based on this statement you made. Somebody in a meeting asked you why PCF, and you said PCF was initially designed to make life easier for developers. You soon realized that the only way to make that happen was to make life easier for operators.
Yeah.
And that ability to have a policy discussion to me feels like an example of that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do have an operations background, and this was the most amazing. PCF was the most amazing thing I had ever seen, and I never conceived that anyone was going to design a robot like this that could work like this. It just, it blew my mind. Well, so you just said 6 people, Matt. How many other people report to you? We know what your platform team looks like.
Well, we've got the 6 on the platform team. We've done an interesting thing in the public cloud space. We had a very small group that were dedicated to public cloud within, and I'm going to say West on purpose because it was before the name change. Yep. We had a very small number that were dedicated to public cloud. We had an architect, we had kind of an operations guy, and then we had a virtual team of people, and it was kind of a coalition of the willing. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That did enough to get us going. We could make things operate, but we found that costs were spiraling out of control very quickly, and we weren't finding out about it until the bill came.
Yeah.
Right. And that's way too late to figure out that you need to change your course.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we have that same guy that I brought with me, Jeff Friesen. We put our public cloud team under him. We dedicated a few resources, and then we have allocated. And when I say allocated, I mean that differently from this coalition of the willing. I mean, we went to the leadership of those teams that were necessary, InfoSec, networking, architecture, and we said, my ask of you is to allocate a person. I'm asking for 33% of their time. I want them a third, and I want them to have a dotted line into the head of this public cloud team. And we thought this was going to be a hard thing. It was a little bit harder sell with the leaders. Mm-hmm. Better once our CTO and CIO both said it's blessed, make it happen.
Yeah.
But then we had an unexpected problem. We had too many people saying they wanted to be the one that was allocated to the team.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what we've done is we've said, look, you're on the team, you come from these backgrounds, but we're going to treat it more like a scrum team, right? Everybody does everything unless you can't do that thing, in which case it goes to the specialist.
Right.
So we've got architects who don't necessarily always roll up their sleeves to get on keyboard and do stuff, trying to get into a task before the guys who would normally be the operations type guys to do it. So we've got the whole team talking about our network topology and our various connectivities from various regions into the various IaaS providers. And I'll be honest, we discovered some huge problems that we didn't know that we had, right? Because we had the right people engaged.
New problems.
And we've had to backtrack things, new problems, that would have bit us hard later. It's a minor bite now. It's an annoyance now.
Yeah.
But we figured them out, and they're actively working to fix them, right? So while the team from a headcount perspective, if I'm looking at budgets, is small, the amount of people that we're able to pull in when we have need is quite large. And in fact, when I say network, because we discovered some network connectivity issues, we've got not one that I asked for, not two that I would hope for, but three, one of them being the director over the network team, who's still very technical, has said, I find this stuff fascinating. I want to be involved myself. So he has allocated himself a significant percentage to play in this space, all understanding that they take their direction from our guy that's leading the public cloud team. It's been a whole lot of fun to watch. I'm staying the heck out of it because it's going way better than it would if I tried to direct it.
Yep.
But I do get to watch chat sessions, and I've actually pointed them out to Terry a couple of times and said, just watch what these guys are doing and look who's commenting, because it's not the guy you'd think it would be.
Yeah, so I started my career in 1994, and technology was fun. Like, I started at Motorola, and when I had no idea what it was going to be like to work at a big company. This push, like, you call any vendor, hey, can I have your most expensive thing for demo? They're like, yeah. And you could go solve a problem with that. And it was amazing. Like, you could gallop. That's how I describe it. You could take on a problem, you could gallop, you could solve it, and you could have a business outcome. And then we went through the .coms where 24/7, ultra high uptimes, all that thing, it basically quashed the ability to gallop. And every system at scale for almost every single company was a bespoke, difficult to deal with thing. Okay, fast forward to really 2015 when PCF PaaS is very mature. It was a mature product at that point. We're certainly doing more things, but you could see all of the bones of it. I believe that allowed us to gallop again. And the kinds of things that I hear from you and from other customers, like we people are rushing the line to help. That's one. People can solve problems like, oh, hey, what's a sensible thing here that we can A, set, B, easily communicate, C, easily enforce, and D, easily change. When you have that kind of optionality around anything, you get to gallop. And so one of the things I'm very sensitive to is that when I sit in front of people and try to convince them of this, they just don't, if they weren't in the industry and remember the galloping period, they don't have any ability to say, what would it be like if we could operate really fast, but more safely? Sorry, too much editorializing from me, but
all good.
Okay. Let's see if we can get a scale attached to this. You've got 6 people and something like 9 others dotted line is what it sounded like. 1 or 2 from 3 different groups.
4, 5, 6, 7, and then a couple of opens. So yeah, you're roughly there with 9.
Okay, well, let's talk about the kind of scale those kind of people can. I'm going to use specific terms here. I use sustainable and humane for operations. Sustainable means you can do it with people you can hire at 40 hours a week or under. Right?
We're not quite ready to say 40 hours a week or under, but we are trending in the right direction. I'll say that.
Well, okay, great. So let's just point at that. When was the last time you were trending to 40 hours a week?
Never in my career.
There's
never been a time trending in that direction. So this year is the first.
Yeah. So 2019 really is, to me, it's the watershed year because SRE is fully out in the world. Kubernetes, we're just going to say it won. Kubernetes has won, and it is a container-based platform meant to be delivered from via CI and meant to be run for a long time. And so that's essentially our new operating system. Okay, so you're with 9 people in 2 vacancies, only 6 of them dedicated. You are trending toward under 40 hours a week.
Yeah, you're close. It's roughly 9, and then there's the 6 operators.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the PCF.
Yeah, so
9. But yes, you're very close, and we're trending towards. And many of the team are already hitting 40 on the regular. I can't guarantee that during an on-call week, and
No.
when we're still trying to fix up our network problems, it's going high. But yes, still down into the right.
Yeah, to me, we're finally inverting operations where it's 30 weeks of disaster, and 20 odd weeks of breathing. I want to invert that to 5 to 10 weeks of disaster and all of the other time actually productively reducing toil. And so that would be a trend that I would be looking for. So
I'll say it. For this year, for 2019, it's been a week and a half of disaster with Pivotal on this side of Intrato. A week and disaster. Let me explain what disaster was. Disaster was trying to do a hardware upgrade that the foundation runs on in one of our on-prem solution sites that didn't go quite right, and we had to try it a couple of times before we got it right.
Yep.
Number of customers that was impacted by that was 0.
Yeah.
None awareness.
Yeah. This is one of the hardest things to convey is in the old model, you auditioned in front of customers. You were practicing while everyone was looking and depending on you. And when you move to a PCF model, you can practice away from the audience. You can actually go break things and see what's going to work and how is it going to go. And then you can move with this much higher confidence. All right, well, let's not bury the lead here. These 15 people who are on a good down and to the right trend in terms of work-life balance, how many applications do they support, and what's their overall effort level to support those applications?
Goodness, this is where I take a step back because honestly, I don't have to track that stuff like I did in my old role.
That's an old problem, yeah.
I manage a platform, right? And the number of apps that run on that platform really doesn't matter to me. If it's 2 or if it's 200, they just go, right? What I do is I say, I need to, at most, if I'm doing something risky, I say push the buttons that routes traffic from site A to site B. It routes to site B. I do what I need to do in site A. I clearly communicate to all of our stakeholders that we're done and we're going to route back.
Yep.
And then we route back, right? Terry, you've probably got the most current numbers.
I do know the numbers, but I think the best number is that you don't care.
Yeah.
To know. I think that's actually the best answer. I mean, I could say, but that's actually the most powerful way to describe it. It's in the same way that we tell application developers to learn how to have their code deployed without them having to care too much about infrastructure. We now have the guy running the PCF operators team saying he doesn't have to care so much about the numbers.
Yep.
That is sitting on that platform. As long as he knows his capacity planning's in good order, he's good to go.
Now, that's not to say that we don't have to work with some of our development teams who have external to the foundation dependencies, right? We do that, but we have many, many more that we don't have to work with, and that's the key thing, right? And I could name off the apps that I do have to care about.
Yeah.
But you could have put in 50 more that I don't have to care about, and I don't have to care.
Yeah. So you're just casually, you're saying something like a 1 to 10 ratio. So for every 1 you have to care about, there's 10 you can essentially not care about. Higher. Yeah.
At least. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I gotta spoil it for the audience at home. I mean, you're north of 10,000 application instances, which is a different number than applications. And so we talked to Thomas about that, and that number, if you had to add another 0 to that, Matt, what would you do? The business says, hey, we figured out how to buy everyone in our space who has a 12-factor compliant application. And that's actually our next acquisition strategy. And we've identified 5,000 of them in the market, which is going to be, 20,000 application instances when it's done. What do you do when you hear that?
The most I start thinking about is capacity.
Yeah.
Right. I don't really worry about, am I going to change how I'm going to handle it? As long as they're following our rules, as long as they're making certain that, they deploy in 2 sites and that they follow our standards around reliability, I don't care.
But that's awesome. I mean, it's just, you've hit on 2 really important things. A, how do you do internal capacity planning? Because behind the firewall, capacity planning with PCF turns out to be a challenge, because you might use all your capacity tomorrow because everyone figured out how it works. And so how do you deal with the uncertainty of capacity planning is harder? There's no easy way to say that. How do you deal with capacity planning?
Well, I will tell you, we are still in what I call crazy build mode. Terry laughs at me when I say it, but we've got 3 on-prem foundations. We've got 3 in AWS. We've got 7, 8 in GCP if we count our sandbox out there. We've got another 9 that we're building in Azure right now. I mean, by the time we're done, we're what is that, 23, 24? I don't do math.
And there's actually a 4th one in AWS too, a dev test and 3-stage prod.
Fair.
Yeah.
So we're still in crazy build mode. If I were to recount for you what's next, right? We're finishing our Azure builds. We're doing that in a very automated fashion. At some point, Tony, I want to talk to you about King Concourse, which is what we call our native deploy them all at once concourse. And then after that, we have a number of things in our backlog that we need to get into. I'm still not satisfied. I don't think I ever will be satisfied with how we're alerting and alarming.
Yep.
And that plays in very much to our capacity management, right?
Yeah.
I know that we're safe right now because while I don't care, I do pay attention to the apps that are on there.
Yeah.
But I'm not satisfied yet with what we've set up internally to Intrato to tell us where we are with capacity at any given time. That's a big thing.
I can't resist the human side of this. So I'm assuming that seeing this trend toward a 40-hour work week when you get into observability like this, the overall goal is to continue to give much more advanced warning, so that you're not, so that you're not. There's no such thing as a forest fire. There might be a little brush fire, but you know how to get to it and put it out.
I'd like to know that 2 sprints from now, I probably need to add some capacity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. IOPS. Here's the secret tip is, on an internal cloud, you must pay attention to IOPS, because it will collapse the entire foundation if you get underwater on IOPS. And there are, I'm sorry, I can't resist this tip because it's bit many customers. There were customers who would do a push and would have, underrated IOPS or sometimes underrated CPU on the IaaS. And then a push where you're recreating everything and doing a lot of draws from everywhere would literally submerge the entire foundation and freeze. So there you go.
We may have seen something similar.
Yeah.
We may have seen that.
This is the one thing is that, sorry, I'll do one more operations thing. PaaS will run at hardware speed. It will saturate hardware all the way out to the inbound line. And this was a thing that was surprising to me, because in my whole career, I had never seen anything that had clear path from entrance to exit, where you could run essentially at whatever, as fast as VMware will allow you to run on hardware. Okay. You said another super important thing. Man, there's 2 more really important things. What is your policy on duplicate deploy? How do you manage it? What does it look like? And the second question, it'll come to me as you answer this one.
So to date, our mandate, and there's very few mandates, but one of our mandates is, if you're going to deploy in site A, thou shalt deploy in site B, and thou shalt have a solid load balancing configuration between the 2.
And what do you do?
For every region, we have a sister region. Right. So if you're East, you're in AWS West as well.
Makes sense. What do you do about data availability? Because that's the typical tripping point.
Yep. So data availability is one where we are a little bit more lenient, right? Because we know that while the apps may be able to be transformed to take advantage of this, we understand that our teams are still struggling with how do we replicate data between regions? How do we make certain that we have an adequate failover model should we have to do so? Yeah. In those areas, we are far more willing to say, look, you can go live, but thou shalt have a plan in X amount of time. And that's kind of a sliding scale depending upon level of difficulty, right?
Yep.
But we don't want to say you can't go on the platform until you solve this problem, because there is a huge lift that you get just by going on the platform. But the acknowledgement must be there that in order to maintain operability of the majority of the apps, I must be able to move traffic. And if your app cannot support that move of traffic, you're in trouble. Let me work with you to say we will only do these moves of traffic off hours or in a certain time frame until such time as you've reached the end of your grace period, right? At which point, I'm sorry, I can't have operators who are only working overnight. The reason that I can support 23, 24 foundations and not have a mountain of operators is that I have to be able to do work during the day and not just app enablement work.
Right.
A little extra commentary about the data layer work is the issues that Matt describes led to a need for other parts of the business to step up their game, basically. We mounted up on a data fabric initiative, which is to become our main refactor option. Thomas, our CTO, once he realized the need that was there, when we actually redid part of our deal with Pivotal to add an aggressive plan to adopt Pivotal Cloud Cache as another arrow in the quiver. And so I get it. We've said it in other podcasts, PCF shakes every tree. This is one of the biggest pieces that fell to the ground that we had to fix. So you just come up with options, you keep things moving, but you can't let it stop.
Yeah. So what I find this particular, so at the beginning, before anyone has been on this journey, they can do the math. They look and they say, okay, well, I see how I could use load balancing to balance across these things, but they still haven't solved the data problem. So therefore, this is not worth it. Okay, how would you respond to, an executive who's trying to make the best decision for their company, and their chief architect brings that problem to them? What would you say to them?
So I've had to have this conversation with various levels within Intrato, up to and including the people who are most difficult to convince, my own operator team, who
Yes.
say they're breaking these rules. We don't have many rules that we stand on anymore, and this is one of them. Matt, don't bend on this. We need you to be firm. And I'm like, guys, let's go look at what this app looked like to support in production before it got put on the platform. There were 8 people that were dedicated to this. That's not to mention all of the devs. That's not to mention all of the DBAs. That's not to mention all of these other people that were that spent hours and hours every week on it. Now let's look at what this looks like today. It's us. We didn't staff up for it. It's virtually free, right? To manage this, and we have this data problem. When we want to go and do a change, we have to go and check a sheet that we keep that says we can't support anything during the day on this foundation. We need to go after 10 or 11 at night until this date, at which point we've agreed to, after this date, we're back to business as usual. So what's better for West? And they kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a fantastic look at it. I mean, I can't resist asking, across the old portfolio, just operations folks, how many operations folks support how many apps in the old portfolio?
I did not have quite all of the applications. There were some stub zones, but I had about 165 people, and those 165 people supported probably double, 3 times app-wise what we have on Pivotal today.
Okay.
So scale that in your head real quick, and you realize just how far ahead of the game we are, because with the ones that we've got today, I don't think we're going to need to add to that when the rest of those move on platform.
Yeah. So 150 people. Let's touch on this sensitive subject. The first thing I ever heard when I started doing executive briefings was, "Hey, I've got a lot of people. How is this going to affect them?" Does Intrato have a strategy for how are you bringing them to the other side? What are they doing? What's up with that?
So let's see. I came from the other side. If I count the people that I've got on staff, all but 2 came from the other side.
Yep.
And then the rest of them are allocated resources on the public cloud team that all come from the other side. Now there's a smaller group. What we've seen is that as we do these moves, anytime you're doing a big transformation, it's probably part of another big initiative, and you're going to have attrition.
Yep.
It just happens because people don't like change.
They don't. It's true.
Those people who self-attrit, it can be very painful. In fact, I look at a couple of those people who have self-attritted, and I would say over the course of my 10 years at Intrato, those were some of my favorite people that have self-attritted.
Yeah.
I stay close to them. Doesn't matter where we work, right? We're still going to be friendly. But that was painful. That said, they left, and so did the workload. The workload shifted.
Yeah.
So we're in a unique situation in that we're driving additional change from lots of different vectors. So we're being highly aggressive in this.
Right.
We were doing this without any of the other transformation initiatives and just doing the PAS initiative, our pivotal initiative. We would have some natural attrition.
Yeah.
I would have outfitted the public cloud team with more of those people who no longer were busy, and I would have spent more time saying, I need you to go and spend some time learning Terraform, and they'd say, what's that? And I'd say, trust me.
Yeah.
Go spend time, right? We have some people out there who have played with Python for years. I would have said, focus, because I got a thing for you over here on that. Yep. But the fact of the matter is you're going to need a hell of a lot less operations people. Now, what does that mean long term? that means a lot of our development initiatives that have always been kind of short-staffed, we can't develop the feature set. Well, you can develop feature set a heck of a lot faster if you're developing to this platform, but you can develop many, many more modules worth of features if you can say, hey, I had some attrition in operations. Let me go ahead and add some headcount over here to the folks who, create value. Customers buy features, not stability. I mean, they want stability, they expect it, but that's just the thing.
Yeah.
They expect it.
Yeah.
Right? It's table stakes.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. We will hear things like, hey, we have 800 people in our IT organization, 300 of whom program. We want 400 in our organization, 350 of whom program. They're moving toward, as you say, and my take is intellectual output of operations is massive. Operations teams day over day crank out tons of intellectual output that's not captured. One of the things I like about the platform is that all of that intellectual output can be trivially captured. So, yeah.
So one of the things that we're doing as part of that transformation is we're driving a DevOps mentality where there has never been one, or where there has been one, it's been kind of this natural outgrowth between a dev team that manages a very problematic platform and an operations team that marries up to them, and they fight a lot, but they're like siblings that have fought forever and kind of figured out that they like each other, right?
Yeah.
So they're doing DevOps where the rest of Intrado is not yet ready to do so. So as we move those apps onto platform, we're saying, okay, now that this percentage of those apps that these two teams support together have moved over, we're taking an ops person and tossing them over into the dev side. And then we're able to, at the very least, start talking about taking an ops person and putting them over here on this other more painful platform.
Yeah.
And overall, the stability that we're seeing across the company has gone way up. In fact, I was interviewing one of our a senior director in our infrastructure for another initiative just this morning, and he was commenting on how much less time he's spending on incident bridges these days.
Yeah.
And I asked him questions, why? Why are we spending so much less time? And he kind of worked his way around to what we just talked about. We're putting good people that aren't needed here anymore, even back on these legacy things. And what's enabling that?
Yep.
The fact that the app is moving to a place where it's so easy to manage.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the fundamental message. If you're watching this wondering what in the world is the payoff, I give you Matt Jensen, right? This is essentially the payoff. We're almost out of time. This has been an awesome conversation. We are definitely going to have to get into some deeper stuff because you just pointed at so many things that are critical. Let me ask this final question. 24 foundations. How do you think about that? Like, why do you have 24? Why didn't you choose dev, stage, and test for the whole company? How do you reach being in every cloud, on-prem with 24 and growing?
Terry, you want to try or you want me to do it?
I'll give it a shot. It comes down to a fundamental pragmatism that starts the program. In other words, we want the apps on PCF. We would prefer to have perhaps fewer foundations. We would prefer to not have to work with every single public cloud vendor in addition to our on-prem sites. But that data layer conversation we had, that's an example of something that tethers an application to a certain venue. Our ability to figure out how hybrid cloud interconnectivity, networking would work is another tether that we had to work through several iterations to get right. And that sort of led us to some other choices. Funding initiatives that happen. Not all of these sites are funded from the same budget source. Initiatives happen, platform consolidations, new customer facing efforts. So you can't put yourself as a program in opposition to these developments. I think the greater strategy is get everyone wherever they can go and then find opportunities to consolidate in the future. And you can already see a time when those decisions might be able to be made, but we've got to get through the data piece. That's number one. We can't even really have that conversation till we're really sophisticated there.
And Terry, when you say that, you mean things like not just how does it work, but the fact that we get much better pricing for SQL Server licenses if we're running in Azure, for example. We do a lot of acquisitions, right? And if we acquire somebody who's already in AWS, if I want to have any success in moving their apps onto the platform, I need to be AWS, right? And if we have a commercial agreement with, where we want to have a go-to-market strategy with, say, Google, for example, well, we're going to have to be in GCP. So no matter how you slice it, we're having a hard time not being everywhere, right? Now, Tony, you asked me an question. I want to answer it a slightly different way. You said, how do I think about it? I'll tell you how I think about it. I think about it on-prem. I think about AWS. I think about GCP, and I think about Azure. And because we've done the automation to kind of abstract ourselves from those, I think about those, and then I think about Pivotal on top of it. Yeah. But I don't think about 9 of them in a site. I think about GCP because King Concourse, they all look the same. They're not the same.
King Concourse will definitely have to be our next discussion.
I'm very excited to talk about King Concourse.
Yeah, we'll do it. Like we're gonna take off of these, which are really meant for executives and people who have to maybe make this choice and live through it. But let's go and start doing the people who are on the line, because that's where it starts getting really exciting for me.
Yeah.
Yep. Terry Miles, Matt Jensen of Intrato, thank you so much for your time this morning, and thanks for doing this series. This is the last one we're shooting, and we can't wait for everyone to see them.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.